Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Thanks once again for taking some time out of your week to have a listen to us. It is the end of March in 2022, and I just want to thank you all once again for listening. I had a look at our stats over the course of this week as I was doing some prep for this week's episode, and we went over 10,000 downloads. So I'm pretty blown away by that. When I started this thing 12 months ago, I kind of expected it would take a little while to get some traction. I didn't expect it to kind of get to the numbers that it's got to in the time that it has. So that's thanks to you. That's thanks to you guys sharing it around, hopefully finding some value out of what I am doing here. And once again, just thanks for listening. Thanks for the support. Thanks for the messages of support. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the questions that you send through. Thank you for all of it. So onwards and upwards, I'm pretty stoked to continue to do this. And hopefully with your feedback and with your help, we can continue to grow this thing. So just before I get started, make sure that you have liked and subscribed on all the channels. That helps us obviously get out to more people who might not be listening at the moment. And also to jump on the socials and like us. So at The Unstoppable Dad on Instagram and The Unstoppable Dad on Facebook. While you're on the Facebook page, we have a free Facebook group there that you can go and you can add yourself into if you like what you're hearing and you want to be part of the bigger community. So this week, I'm going to want to talk about how nothing we ever do in life is linear, especially when it comes to success or perceived success. And one of the reasons I want to talk about this is I've had now two conversations with two good friends of mine this week, just in regards to the happenings of the last couple of years specifically, but life and success and moving everything forward. And it doesn't matter whether it's business, whether it's life, or whether it's training, like nothing's ever linear. And if you're not sure what I mean by linear, it means that nothing ever moves in a straight line. So usually what happens, let's take training for an example, is that it will go up a little bit and then it's going to come down. And then it's going to go up a little bit more and then it's going to come down. If you're watching the video version of this, you'll see me moving my hands in a way where even though we're getting those ebbs and flows, the overall trend of everything is moving its way up. And really, when it comes to giving yourself daily actions, habits, and behaviors that you want to do in order to succeed in whatever it is that you want to do, you want to make sure that the overall trend is moving up, because it's not ever going to be linear. And it can sometimes feel like that we're not getting anywhere. It can also sometimes feel like that we're always in a cycle where we're moving backwards. And I know, especially over the last couple of years, with all the tumultuous shit that's been happening within the world, like external circumstances, some of it internally, how I've been processing those external circumstances and responding to them, it can sometimes feel like we're never, ever getting anywhere and we're forever going backwards. And it's really about ebb and flow and learning how to deal with those retractions or those retracements so that we can get things moving forward. And the overall trend of what we're trying to achieve is moving up in a good direction. And there's a couple of things that I've been thinking about after those conversations I've had, and also looking at what's happening within my life at the moment, where I've got to look at, how I'm measuring success in any aspect of life, and also what time frame I'm looking at things over. Because if we're looking at things on a very short time frame, and it may be a short time frame depending on what we're talking about, may be a couple of weeks, it may even be a couple of months, it might even be like a year, right? Because we can have a bad year and not have a bad life, because that year might be a year of retracement when it comes to, say, business or personal life. It might be a year where we've been inconsistent with our training, but that doesn't mean overall and over a lifetime of 60, 70, 80, 90 years, it's going to, we're having a bad life. Okay. But when we look at things and we look at trends, we've got to kind of look at like, is this retracement something that's been ongoing? Am I taking action to actually move things forward again? Or am I just accepting that things are bad and they're going to stay bad and I can't get out of it? Like, am I riding the wave rather than trying to paddle out of it? And that's the thing. Like, when we look at the time frame, sometimes we just have to take that retracement in order to move forward. In strength and conditioning and in training, there's a style of training at which usually, like for us in our programs, we use it with beginners, and it's called linear periodization. And basically the way it works, to break it down in a nutshell, let's say, for example, we're starting with somebody who's never lifted before, and they might start with let's say a back squat with an empty barbell on their back. And each week we add a little bit of weight. Each time we do the movement, we add 2.5 kilos. So they might be doing this movement once a week, twice a week, or whatever the case might be. But they're adding, let's say they're adding 5 kilos a week. And they just keep adding 5 kilos a week. And what that does is that allows them to gain technical proficiency in the movement. It allows them to kind of understand their body and how it responds under load without overloading their body. And then it also creates a foundation so that when they get into their later years, or their later years of training, they have a very strong, solid foundation. So what happens is you continue to add that 2.5 kilos a session, 5 kilos a week, until it gets to the point where you can't do 3x5 or 5x5. Everyone does have a slightly different variation of this. It doesn't really, in my experience, it doesn't really matter. If you're an absolute beginner, I think 5x5 is probably good, because the volume will help you become more technically proficient at the movement. 3x5, if you're a little bit more advanced, you might get a little bit more out of doing less sets. But anyway, you'll get to a point where you can't do the 5x5 at a particular weight. So what do we do there? We actually take a step back. So we reset 3 weeks. So let's say 15 kilos, and then we start that again. And then we start and we continue to add that 5 kilos a week. And what happens in essence, if somebody is a beginner with this particular thing, is they will continue to go past that plateau where they stopped, and they'll go and they might be maybe 10 or 15 kilos over that. And then they'll find the same thing will happen again. So let's say, for example, the first reset was at 60 kilos. We drop back down to 45, and then they go up. They might get to 80, right? Same thing happens at 80. They're unable to get their 5x5 out with good posture and position. Then we reset 15 kilos. So we go down to 65 and we start that climb again. Then they might get to, say, 90. And then we reset again. And then they might then only get to 90 again. And at that point, we would then probably determine that linear periodization template that we've got has given them all they can give. So we change the training stimulus, we change the type of program that we're on, and we evolve from that. Now, the reason I mention that is because if we take that philosophy into everything else that we do in life, there's going to be times in life where we need to take that reset, and life will generally throw that reset at us. So whether it's business, whether it's life, whether it's training, there's going to be an ebb and a flow. And if we use the example of that linear periodization, let's say, for example, if we don't take the reset, so then we just keep trying to get that 60 kilos over and over and over again, what's probably going to happen is you're probably going to wind yourself up into some trouble, or you're going to get very mentally fatigued with training, because all you are doing is you are just reinforcing failure rather than reinforcing the fact that you can do this movement and you can continue to move it forward. So with that, what we're looking at is we're literally looking at, in order to move this movement forward, all I need to do is continue to do the movement. And then when I get to a point where I'm unable to progress any further, I'm going to take a step back, and then I'm going to keep going up. So even in a linear progression, there is still a regression in order to move forward. And these are the conversations that I've had with my 2 friends over the last week, is the fact that, like, right now, I personally, and they have as well, feel like we've just been moving backwards for a very, very long period of time. And then if we take a step back and we zoom out and we look at a longer period, so not even just the last 18 months or 2 years, but we look at over the last 10 years or 5 years, we can actually see that even though we're in a dip at the moment, the overall trend is moving up. And then this got me for reflecting a little bit. All right, so if the overall trend is moving up, what have I been doing in order to keep that moving forward? And to be fair, the last little while, I've probably been a little bit stagnant with some of the efforts that I've been putting in and the actions I've been putting in to move things forward. And I've kind of been riding the wave rather than trying to paddle out. And it's something that I think we all get stuck in. And I think it's an element of pride, because something works for us for a particular amount of time and it works for a while. And then we kind of think that it should keep working because we get good results from it. But then what we don't do when things start going bad is we think that we've just got to, like, stubbornly, we've just got to keep working and we've just got to keep grinding. And we don't make the decision to change early enough. And that can cause us some issue because, like what I was talking about with that linear periodization, we think that because we've been taking the same approach, it should continue to work. And instead of just taking that slight reset and maybe taking an L or two here and there, we're too proud to kind of let some things go in order to help us move forward. So looking at our progression in business, in life, in training on a longer period, and understanding that nothing is ever really going to be linear, like we actually have to take a step back, we have to take a dip in order to move up. And then also understanding and looking at, if we are in a dip, how long do we stay in that before we have to actually change our approach in order to get us moving forward? Because that's a hard one, because sometimes it's just a bad period and it's just a bad couple of weeks. And if we keep taking the same action, we may be able to, like, things are going to start to work out. Because if it's prolonged and that dip's prolonged, even though the overall trend over a very long period may still be up, there is an element of mental fatigue where you can only continue to move backwards for so long before you start to feel completely defeated. And then when you start to enter that the defeatist mindset, you stop taking actions because you become uninspired, you become unmotivated to do those things. And yes, you can go down the rabbit hole of, motivation's fleeting and you need to rely on discipline. But if you're winning and if you're moving forward, it becomes a lot easier to stay inspired and stay motivated and stay disciplined. So there's a juxtaposition here where we have to understand that there's an ebb and flow in everything and nothing's ever going to be linear. But what we want to aim for is for the overall trend to be going up and the overall trend over a long period of time. But we also don't want to get caught in this place where we are constantly moving backwards and we're being too stubborn to change due to our pride, due to our ego, or whatever that case might be. And as men, and personally, after these conversations that I've had this week, it's something that's forced me to really look hard on the actions that I've been taking, even though I have felt like I've moving backwards. And yes, we have been moving up, but it's been at a very, very slow rate. It sometimes means that I need to take a step back and we need to actually make a change. So we need to do that forced reset for ourselves so that we can continue to move forward. And then when you've gotten all you can out of that linear progression program, use that literally or metaphorically, it's time to change the approach. So a little bit of a riff there for 15 minutes on moving forward, trying to keep yourself moving forward. And if you feel like you're moving backwards, how long do you wait before you make a change? They're very hard questions and things that I battle with all the time, because I'm all for positivity and patting yourself on the back. And on one side of it, looking at, look how far we've come over the last 20 years as a person, and evolved as an organism, and a training, like in our training, physically, mentally, emotionally. But then if you go through a hard year or a hard couple of weeks, like how long do you give it where you keep taking the same action before it needs to change? Because there's going to be a point where if you continue to move backwards and you just feel like you're on skates and you can't get any traction to move forward, where potentially taking that same action needs to change. And it's a very interesting conversation. Let me know if it's something that you struggle with. It's something that I struggle with all the time, because I'm very stubborn, I'm very pig-headed, and I'm very determined to make things work. But there is a point where, even though things have been moving forward, when they start to move backwards, how long do you let them move backwards for? So take care out there. If you need any help, please reach out. Obviously, we've got training programs and everything like that as well. But if you want to go and jump into our private Facebook group, you can go ahead and do that on our Facebook page. So thanks so much for listening. I appreciate your time. I'm out. See you next week. Bye.